So hello everyone. Good morning. It's great to see you all. Thank you for attending and being a part of the session today. So to give you a quick brief about Startup Grind, Startup Grind has been growing since 2012. We have a presence in more than 100 countries today and in more than 300 cities. And we happily, and the amazing thing is we get to host amazing people like Poornima, who are able to share their entrepreneurial experiences, challenges, and all the wins that they have accomplished over the period of being an entrepreneur. So before we get started with interviewing and getting to know about Poornima and the initiative at Women at Work, I'd like to share that Startup Grind has this global conference this year from February 12th to the 14th in San Francisco, in California. So we have people like Eric Schmidt from Google, and then we have Dustin Hoffman from LinkedIn, the founder of LinkedIn, and many more attending. So if you have anyone that's in that area or anyone's visiting, please do share it with them, where they can meet with individuals we ordinarily may not have an opportunity to meet with or connect with. Great, so I'll quickly introduce Poornima as briefly as possible. So Poornima has had a lot of experience working with organizations like Godrej, Airtel, and even IBM, where she has headed the talent acquisition and the HR divisions within the organizations for a number of years. From there, she has founded Women at Work, which is an exclusive digital professional platform and magazine exclusively for women. Now, Women at Work has a membership base of more than 400,000 women across India and around the world as well, which is really amazing. And the vision of Women at Work is to be the go-to place for all women who want to be, want to get back into the workplace or continue as an employee or as an entrepreneur in any field of their choice. So I think it's an amazing community, and like I said, I'll try and be as brief as possible. And what I will request Poornima is to tell us a little more, share a little more light about your career or your corporate work, let's say prior to Women at Work.
Right. First of all, thank you for this platform, and it's outstanding to meet so many people, and it's obviously been a journey. Many years back, rather 3 years back, I was on the other side. I was in the corporate world. And now I know how it is to be on this side. Of course, this journey also is a long way to go. But I think the very fact that you are all here is, I think, the starting point of an entrepreneurial journey. And because I know when you work with corporates, I was in HR, and we would organize a lot of training programs, and you had to push people to get into the room because you think you need to push people to learn. And in a startup phase, and as an entrepreneur, I don't think nobody's going to push you to learn. I think it's very simple. If you don't learn, you just don't exist. So I think it's as simple as that. So I think that's one of the lessons that I learned when I moved in. But just giving a little brief of my corporate background. While I'm in the space of media and communities today, my education is in human resources. I did my MBA in HR, and this was in '98. And then I, started my career like any other corporate professional. I've spent about 16 plus years in the industry, and the companies like Airtel, Godrej, and last of all IBM. I worked with them for 10 years, and after that so within IBM, in those 10 years, I was primarily focusing. I was a talent director, so essentially, getting talent, putting them in the right places. So when you're a startup, also you have talent issues. But in IBM, that's like obviously the number of people are many, so that was a big focus area. So that's where actually I got exposed to IBM globally. Is one of the top brands in terms of gender diversity and inclusion. Actually, diversity and inclusion, not just gender. Diversity means a lot of, having different people, right? This room is diverse; it's got different kind of people. So to have diverse set of people and be included in the workforce is a big difference to any company. And even if you're a 1-person company or a 10-person company or a 400,000 person company, I think it still is as important to all of us. So that's where I realized the importance of diversity and inclusion. And because of IBM's brand leadership in that, I got a chance to do a lot of good work within IBM, and I also got a chance to interact with the communities outside. And that's how I realized my passion for the space. And I realized, I wanted to do something in gender diversity. So my corporate career, while has been a full-blown exposure to human resources functions, I kind of focused and narrowed on gender diversity as the core that I wanted to move into. And I had like everybody else, I come from a service family. My entire family is government service. My parents in government service. My husband is an ex-armed forces. Now, of course, he's also an entrepreneur. But I never thought that I'd become an entrepreneur because, like all good children of that age, we studied to get good jobs. And I thankfully did not have an on-site dream, so I was pretty much here. But I never thought, I think after 10 years I started realizing I need to do something. And unfortunately, I don't call myself a young entrepreneur, but I'd call myself an entrepreneur nevertheless. And it's never too late to start. So that's where I realized I wanted to create something of my own, something that I could leave an impact with. Something that could make a little, very little difference to the world really, but something that I should be proud of doing and kind of creating it. So that's how the entire career experience got filtered, and then I kind of, decided of what are the areas I wanted to move into. So that's a little about my career on that.
And since you have been involved in different facets of HR and the media, why women at work? And what's the main detail behind it, the vision, the focus within HR and women at work? So, let's share why women at work.
Sure. So, very honestly, when I started off my career, you don't think of yourself as a woman or a man, right? You just start a career, you study, you do engineering, you do whatever, media, communication, journalism, you just get into a workforce. And you start working, and then you think because you're good and you're talented, you will get everything, you will move up the ladder, things will happen to you and all that stuff. But it's when you get into the corporate life, 5 years, 6 years down the line, you start realizing, and you're also connected with a lot of ecosystem people around, you realize that after 5-6 years, typically after 25, between 25 and 35, the age group, people start, especially women, start to fall off the career graph. There are biological issues, there are societal issues, there are a lot of cultural issues as well. So even before, I see a lot of girls and women getting educated for a good marriage. It's not about careers, it's a good marriage, which is a very different ballgame because you're an engineer from one of the top engineering institutes or an MBA from one of the top institutes. You would assume that you're studying because you have a career horizon, but unfortunately that was not the case. And I started experiencing it within IBM, and I realized that 90% of women were actually stepping out of the workforce, either temporarily or permanent. In fact, I was just reading a statistic the other day. It said if between 2003 and 2012, if you calculate the number of women who have stepped out of the workforce, whether as an entrepreneur or as a employee, in India, it would be the third largest city in the world after Shanghai and Beijing. So those are the numbers we're talking about. They are out of the workforce. The population of India, 50% women. On an average, 50% women, 50% men. But look at the participation in the workforce. It's dismal, it's pathetic. You look at companies, you look at places, you look at startup entrepreneurship ecosystems, you probably see the good places, you'll see 30% participation, the bad places, you'll see 0 to 5% participation. So I realized along the way in IBM that there were a lot of issues. There were things happening. So while there was technology, while there were a good workplaces, multinational thinking, progressive culture was coming in, there's still a lot of space. And I realized diversity and inclusion is a real challenge. For women to get included, especially after the age of 25. 25 that things still look more equal. But there's this nice article in one of the leading diversity sites I had read. Everything was equal till I got married. And then, life throws whatever, lemons, oranges, whatever at you, and then you suddenly realize, oh my God, life is not as equal. And that's when I realized that we're losing a lot of lovely, beautiful, talented women, and one is you're losing them, and after 3-4 years, when you start connecting with them, so you do this with course mates, right? I mean, my graduate course mates and my MBA course mates. So I, did my post-graduation from Pune, from Symbiosis. My graduation was from a girls' college in Delhi called Lady Shri Ram. So, you have people all around the place. So, a lot of women you're connected with, and suddenly you realize after 5 years, they're out of the workforce, and B, they're not happy about it. So, one good thing is you're out of the workforce and you're happy about it because you're taking care of, whatever, home, whatever that means, kids, etc., but you're not happy about it. So, that's when I realized things are not good. We might have a lot of structures in place, but this is a focus area. And over a period of time, while, the onslaught of digital came, I mean, Google, the Facebooks, the social media stuff started coming in. And when I looked around, in fact, this was in about 2013 or 13, I think I was doing a session in my company for a diversity and inclusion event. And a few women came up to me after the event and said, Poornima, I mean, all this you're talking is lovely and great. It sounds all grand. Tomorrow, if I quit the workforce and I want to start off something on my own, or I just quit and after 2 years I want to come back, where do I go? And I was just thinking, I said, I thought a lot and I really couldn't find a place to direct them to. And I said, I think probably you just have to do Google search. I mean, that's the best I could give. That's the best answer I had. And it's unfortunate because we all know, I mean, while we all live on Google search, we probably go to it some multiple times in a day. But we also know the kind of information that comes up. We need to spend a lot of time looking for the right stuff in it, right? And there are, of course, mechanisms behind Google search, etc., on what comes up first. So I realized, and that got me thinking. I said, you're in a digital age. There are no boundaries. Everything is around the world. Everybody's accessible to everything. Media is accessible. But why is there nothing for working women? I mean, what would I refer this woman to if she really wants to come back or do a entrepreneurship stint? And that got me thinking. So kind of 2013, I started thinking, and then I realized that diversity and inclusion, gender, is a big issue. And I looked at some of the statistics outside. 40% women quit the workforce every year. They're out in the market. Rather not out in the market, they're out at homes, not knowing what to do. They're all talented, right from design to media to engineers to doctors, they're all there. And that's when I realized that talking about diversity and inclusion is one thing, but doing something about it is the other thing. And that's how I realized and kind of found, there's this thing saying about entrepreneurship, right? Passion has to meet purpose. So I think, I was passionate about, HR and human resources and diversity. And here I found a purpose. And I must say this, I'm not a feminist. Okay. I'm not someone who holds the flag for women. Just because I don't believe that they need to be empowered or, they're downtrodden. I believe in one simple thing, that if you give the right resources, the ones who want to do something will do something about it. The ones who don't want to do, you can't really do anything about it. So you can get the horse to the water, you can't make it drink. So I'm not someone who says, everything needs to be done for women because they are, the minority. But I also think you need to bring them the right resources and the right enablers for them to seize the opportunity and move forward. And which is why it's happy, I see a lot of women sitting here. I go to a lot of entrepreneurship events and probably the attendance is 5% women, sometimes it's even 0. So, women have to actually step up out of their houses and go to a place to do something. And that itself is a big step for women. I mean, really, we're starting from ground zero. So that's really where, it all kind of started. And that's how Women at Work came into being. And I was very, very clear. And I looked around the ecosystem. So, this was my idea. So I said, okay, now what do I do with this? I looked around and I said, okay, we're talking about women. So what are the conversations happening on women? So I looked up a lot of media sites. US is a front runner in most of the gender diversity inclusion initiatives. The West, really, Europe, the Nordic countries are of course the best in terms of gender equality. But when I looked around, I said, any conversations about women working over 3 months, all websites, all portfolios, all media properties was slowly moving into motherhood. So you're talking about working women, but your conversation focus is motherhood, parenting, how to manage your kitchen and your husband better. And I said, where's work? Where are we talking about engineering? Where are we talking about STEM? Where are we talking about economics? Where are we talking about design and media? Because if I'm 50% worker, it's only the other 50% that has other responsibilities, right? I'm a talented professional, and when you go to male sites, male-oriented discussions, the conversations are, there's no conversation about a family at all. In fact, I read this very interesting thing, CEO was getting interviewed by a very popular magazine, and at the end of it, the CEO asked the journalist, he said, I'm very surprised you've not even asked me about my family and how I handle my daughter and, my work-life balance. So the journalist was stunned. Because you don't think that you have to ask men about work-life balance, right? So when you're talking about working women, you have to talk about work. And then I looked at the magazines and the media, and then of course, there are a lot of magazines in the market today. If you think of magazines in the market, if I ask you to name 2 women magazines today, I think you probably, might have 2 names coming up on your head. Anybody wants to take a guess? The top 2 women magazines in the market, does anybody have a guess on what they are?
Women's Era
and what's
Cosmopolitan.
So those are the magazines, right? Nothing wrong with any of the magazines. They're all amazing pieces of work, but they don't showcase the career side of women. And incidentally, I think many of them today are being read by men as well. Right? For whatever the reason. But the point is, media is so powerful. Media, you look at TV, you look at digital, you're an expert on media, right? You do so much of stuff. You look at audio visuals, you look at written, print. And here, probably less than 10% of coverage in media is about women as professionals. How many expert panels on television have you seen having an equal representation of men and women? When you're talking about budgets, why do you need to have expert panels which have all male panels? Why not 50-50? The equal number of women who are doing good finance stuff. We have women in this room who are doing finance. Women can comment as well on economic matters. So the point is, so I did a little scan of the workspace. See, as a startup, you have an idea, you have purpose, you have passion. But at the end of the day, if you want to start up, you want to run a business, it has to make business sense. Many people ask me this, is Women at Work an NGO? Is it a not-for-profit? I say it's not. It's not a charitable organization. It's not an organization where I'm, uplifting women. I'm not doing anything of that sort. It's a business venture. It's a venture where I want to enable a community to do better at work, and I want to run it as a business, because if I make money and I'm successful, I'm actually impacting hundreds of thousands of people who will be successful by my venture. So I very clearly tell them it's not a not-for-profit. A lot of people tell me it's a very noble cause that you're doing. I said I'm not doing any noble cause. I'm not a social worker in the sense of the term that I'm not given up on life and saying, okay, now let me just give back to society without having any any other agenda around it. I admire those who are in that space, but for me, I wanted to do something because there's nothing called a free lunch. I was Ayush and Pratap and I were talking sometime back about doing sessions and doing other things. There's nothing called a free lunch. All of us, somebody is paying for your lunch, and we need to make sure that economics is built in. But I was very clear, it's a for-profit social venture, because if you don't get 50% representation of women in the workforce, your economies are doomed, your working places are doomed, your organizations are doomed, the economies will not exist. Because I think a lot of McKinsey research has come out and it says adding women to the workforce adds 1.6 trillion to the entire GDP of a country like India. Imagine the amount, just because women are at work.
If you could share a little bit about the challenges that you faced in bringing women at work together and growing the community to 400,000 women entrepreneurs and individuals on the platform. The upsides to the challenges as well.
So I think I heard a lot of people saying, how do we build communities? So this was a question I asked myself when I started off, really, because for me, I'm not from the media world. I don't have qualifications in media. Neither have I experience in media, on the working side of it. So I had to kind of discover the world by itself. And I looked at a lot of communities that are already in space. So, the social media communities like Facebook, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, of course, is the most professional network that most of us are familiar with. Then I looked at some of the other communities that work in either ecosystem startups. Now, the one thing that I realized in media, even if you pick up a newspaper or you pick up a magazine, even if it's digital or print, you need to have certain amount of people consuming your content. Otherwise, the media business is a non-starter. So you don't do products and services till you have consumers who are consuming your services in space. I mean, it sounds very simple and very base, but that's really where it all started. So I had to actually first see whether there was a group of women who was actually interested in this kind of content. Whether, so when I actually also did my media research, I said, why has nobody created a professional space for women online? There could be someone who's thought of an idea, right? Somewhere, so why hasn't it worked? Maybe it's not a viable business model. Maybe it doesn't work for people. When I looked at magazines, I somehow realized that the power of a magazine and a media magazine is very, very strong compared to digital properties today, because digital has become a clutter. There is a lot of stuff that happens on digital, and very honestly, many of you are in the tech space, website space. It's very easy to create a website today. You can even do it virtually free of cost. You can create a website and put up everything there. So what about? But there was also this other discussion which said magazines are dying, print is on its way out, and probably magazines are going to get killed. So I did a bit of research, and I still realized that the people who read magazines are serious readers. So you have this balance that you need to strike between quantity and quality. Do you want to have more number of people coming to you, or do you want to have a high quality of people? Even if it's 10, should it be more? It should be higher quality, right? That's a typical business question we need to ask. So then I said, probably in the beginning, I need to filter on quality, because I want women, I want users and readers who are more focused on knowing more about work to come here. And then if they spread the word, it's much stronger, because that's a more sustainable model. And for some reason, I was, I kind of, the rabbit and the tortoise story, I'm more comfortable with the tortoise. Okay, so I believe that slow and steady, because digital you can really grow very fast, but I wanted to kind of have the word of mouth spread. I wanted to get people's reactions, and then I knew if one woman likes it, she will recommend it to 10 others, and then it will spread much, much better. So that's how I really started. And magazine as a bootstrapped venture was a very difficult space to get into. I don't do too much of print because it's capital intensive, but I'm an R&I registered magazine, which means, I do prints, but I do limited prints. In India, to do any print magazine or newspaper, you need to be registered with a registrar of newspapers of India, otherwise you can't print magazines. But I do digital. And then my early customers, my early customer acquisition was a freemium model. It's a free model where the magazine is free on the site today. People can come and read it, because I want people to read content. I collaborated with a lot of companies. So since I come from the HR world, so I used my personal connections in terms of corporate connections, and went to them and said, look, I have this property that I've created, which is about working women. Is this relevant to you? I came from the corporate world. I knew the answer for, let's say, some of the companies I worked with, but I wanted them to evaluate whether this worked for them. And they ran it past a few, women in their company. And then, I think they got the answer. So within the first 1.5 years, I got into about 5 big conglomerates in India. And they have pan-India presence. So, some of the early adopters of the content and the magazine were companies like Capgemini, then Infosys, some of these big companies who have a lot of women working with them started. And then they started consuming the digital property inside their intranet. So, the magazine still comes out, but inside their intranet. So, that's how the early adopters came in. And once corporate users came in, the women started reading it in corporate places. They obviously had friends, family, sisters, daughters, friends who they started recommending. So that's how the community started to grow. And we of course used social media, to our advantage. But with social media, I've realized, and this is my personal experience with due respect to everybody who's done it before. Social media today again is a clutter. You need to have really strong content to have stickiness. And people who stick to you are serious people. They will stick to you, but you can't just be present all the time because it really doesn't work. So I went a little slow on social media. We have a presence because I'm a digital media. I can't not have a presence. But getting users primarily through corporate collaborations and women communities. So we tied up with a lot of women entrepreneurship communities. I was part of a couple of networks in India. Then I connected with a lot of women-centric forums because I come from that space. I also collaborated with existing ecosystems. So I think we were having this discussion with someone. There are many people doing the same thing that you are doing. Is it competition or is it collaboration? Right? That's a big question we all ask, So there were a lot of people who were already doing something in the women's space. And I had to ask, am I actually tying up with a competitor? Or is there something in it for them and for me? And then when I went in and I realized that they were also looking at it the same way. Because they said the market is so big that we are all too small to, touch maybe a little above the iceberg probably of the market. So unless we put our heads, economic resources and our mind share together, it doesn't grow. So that's where I realized a lot of women communities and forums. So there are governmental forums like CII, Women's Network, a lot of which, so we collaborated. At each stage we collaborated with networks and communities because that's how we reached forward.
We met Ayush at an event. And I believe that was under the Made by Her outreach for women entrepreneurs and individuals. So if you could share a little more about what Made by Her is.
Sure. So we spoke about diversity space, and one of the it's a very popular conversation in the Western countries, especially US and Nordic, is inclusion of women in the supplier ecosystem. So I came from the corporate world. My initial foray was to get women included in the workforce, which means professional workforce. So you work as an employee. Then I discovered this entire parallel system that existed, where globally there is a wave that any organization needs vendors and suppliers to them. Vendors can be anything like a physical product. It could be the food you're eating. It could be the vending machines you use for coffee tea. It could be your printing stationery. It could be web technologies. It could be IoT. It could be financial services. I think most people in this room who want to do something or already have a product are potential vendors for a company. Now, over the last about 5-7 years in India and prior to that, companies like Walmart, Accenture, IKEA, and some of the Nordic companies, some of the other Nordic companies, they looked at their supplier system and they looked at their vendors and said, okay, how many vendors do we have in what category? So when they did an analytics of it, they realized less than 5% of their vendors are women-owned businesses. So 95% businesses that they get supplied through are actually male-owned businesses, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with it, except what happens is, when you have women entrepreneurs coming into foray, so all the women sitting here who own businesses, and when I say women entrepreneurs, women-owned businesses means at least 51% stake in the business. That's what qualifies as a woman-owned business. 51% stake, whether you're a proprietor, of course, full, but private limited LLP, you need to have minimum 51% stake, qualifies as a woman-owned business. These companies consciously realized, women are creating products, women are doing things, but they're not getting included in the corporate supply system. And there's a huge business, all of us in this room know, getting corporate clients, getting government clients is a make or break for our businesses. And if women who are creating, beautiful technologies, beautiful products, lovely innovative stuff are excluded out of the system, you're actually not practicing inclusion. So that's how supplier diversity with gender came as a focus. And then we created, so last year we launched a property called Made by Her. So that's the property, it's called Made by Her, #Made by Her. As it says, it's about women who have done something, who create their own properties, physical, tangible services. And our endeavor has been to connect such women-owned businesses with companies who have a supply diversity agenda. So the first Made by Her event we did in Pune in Western in November, we had about 150 women coming in. And we had about 25 women who had come as exhibitors. When I say exhibitors, it's not B2C. So nobody's selling, sorry to be stereotypical, but I'd like to qualify, nobody was selling saris and nobody was selling, jewelry, because when you say exhibition, women, that is the connotation it conjures up in the mind. So I just want to clarify that. It was a B2B. There was a woman who manufactures toilet paper. Yeah. And she supplies to corporates because everybody needs it, right? So, she was a vendor. Then you had, of course, all the other ranges. So there were companies like Walmart, IBM, Cognizant, Sandvik, Zensar, all of them came in. And they came in specially to meet the women entrepreneurs to see whether they meet the scale of quality and, the criteria that they have for entrepreneurs, for vendors. Because, see, nobody is going to give concessions because you're a woman entrepreneur. If your product and your quality is not up to the mark, you're competing with everybody, including men and women in the outside world. So if you don't have a product and you don't have the capacity to scale. So, I kind of give this example. Everybody knows Mars chocolates, right? Everybody knows Mars chocolates. Now, some people come up and say, I make chocolates. Okay? So you can be a home chocolate maker, right? And you can be Mars. The owner of Mars is one of the wealthiest women in the world today. Self-made business. So it's not about what you make, it's about your vision. It's great if you have a very specific luxury chocolatier business, great. But if you want to be in mass products, your vision is Mars. So there's nothing demeaning a chocolate maker because, it's a home business in our minds. You can actually become anybody there. So the point is, do you have the scale? Do you have the ability, the capacities to build tomorrow? And are you good enough in terms of quality and pricing to be able to compete in the world? That's what a supply diversity initiative is. And Made by Her is a platform that provides that link. So, we are a community. A lot of women entrepreneurs, are on our platform. If they choose to and they think they are ready, we connect them with these companies who are looking for vendors. These companies are looking for both male and female vendors. But if there are female vendors who make the cut, then they get a chance to make a proposal to these companies and move forward. So we started off as an event. Today we have launched, in fact about a month back we launched Made by Her as an online platform. It's on our course site womenatwork.in. It's India's first B2B platform for connecting women entrepreneurs with corporates. So in that platform, any woman entrepreneur can list herself and corporates will put in leads there. And if both want to connect, so they basically connect. It's like a connecting, it's like a platform and a community again, but specifically for women entrepreneurs so that you can scale and grow. So that's the entire platform. In fact, we also have, we're just launching a closed group for that and a couple of other digital properties to support the physical entity of Made by Her, because there is a lot of business potential for women to connect with corporates and grow their business. So that's really what Made by Her is. And again, in India, in spite of the digital age, in spite of media, in spite of a lot of stuff, unfortunately, many of us never knew about supply diversity and that women actually are being sought for by companies. And remember, companies are not doing any charity. They're doing this because it's making business sense to them, because they found women vendors, to be price competitive, to be quality competitive, and for them it just makes more sense because their goal is to optimize their vendor system, supplier ecosystem. So if you're doing a good job, and again, there's no charity in this. You're doing a good job, they want you, the twain meet. There's no charity at all in this. That's really what Made by Her is about.
So I think a basic necessity of procuring goods from small businesses, it's said small businesses is the backbone of any economy, and especially women are able to present it to the right kind of a channel. And you have been running this kind of community Made by Her for a year and a half. So what have your learnings been so far with regards to women actually presenting and getting a chance, an opportunity to offer or present your offerings to the corporates is one thing. But what kind of learnings have you had with the successes that they have, the women entrepreneurs have accomplished, in establishing a business and even growing it within the corporate ecosystem?
Right. So two things. So one is, immediately after this event was in November, So I got a lot of mails. People said the event was done well, but you always think, people don't say anything bad on your face, right? They'll go back when the hangover is over, then they'll come. The best were the mails that I got after 15 days, which really told me how the event was, and it was, they gave extreme positive feedback, but that was one part. The other part was, 3 of them came back and said, we've actually closed businesses worth, the total value of businesses closed was between 1 to 2 lakhs in a span of 40 days. That, I think, for me was the biggest impact, because connecting the women to the corporate ecosystem and them actually closing out businesses which otherwise they would never have been able to even get a foot in the door. So what I do is, as Made by Her, or my venture is about a foot in the door. I cannot get you the business, but I can get you a foot in the door. But the fact that these women, capable women, could actually get businesses closed, and we all know how difficult it is to do businesses with corporates, because there's so many vendors vying for the same business. So actually, the value is, a couple of lakhs, but having finished it in 45 days, I think was the biggest, personal satisfaction for us. And I think for the women also who are a part of it, initially, women, came, so there's this little thing about women, I must say here. And I'm taking the liberty to say this as a woman, it's been one of the toughest spaces to work in, very honestly, because sometimes you just have to shake women up. Sometimes you really have to shake women up, because I think it's, people are going to come and take you to the next level. Nobody comes and takes you to the next level. I think women have a lot of capability, have a lot of talent. Lack of self-confidence comes up over and over again in these things. Third is, I think women are always looking for endorsements from somewhere else. Should I go for this? Can I do this? They're looking for a third person to tell them that you're good at it. At the end of the day, you look at all successful men and women. All successful men and women in corporates and in entrepreneurship world, they've done it because they believed in themselves and they wanted to do something. There are enough of excuses all of us have. Everybody has kids, everybody has, a life, everybody has elders to care for today. It's not just kids, right? You have to take care of your parents. There are lots of things, there are lots of issues with everybody. But the women who really want to do something and the men who really want to do something are the ones who really do it. So it's been unfortunately a bigger challenge in the women's space to actually pull the women out and say, look, if you want to do something, you need to actually first come out. First let people know that you're doing something. It starts as basic as that. And speaking about your products and services, sometimes women find it so difficult to talk about what they're doing. They just come and they don't even know what they want to talk about. And they're all amazing people. They can do amazing work. But I think it's a little push that's required. And thankfully, being a woman, I can do it. Because when men push women, it's seen differently. But when women push women, I can take a few more liberties. So, we do that. And the women who came for this event, they said, thank you so much for pushing us to come into this event. And then they said we had a few exhibitors who met all these companies because they thought they're right, they have the right opportunity. Some of these women came back and said, the next time I don't want to be, in the audience, I want to be an exhibitor. I think that was the biggest lesson even for them, because they saw these 20 women doing it. They said, I can also do it. What's stopping me from doing it? So an inspiration which is in action. And sometimes, you have a Steve Jobs quote here. I think he's the poster child of all entrepreneurs. Sometimes people don't know what they're looking for. It's true. Nobody told him that, the iPhone is what we want, right? Or the iPod is what we want. But they created products which consumers didn't know about. So sometimes you have to be passionate about it. Of course, it has to meet expectations of people. But unless you are passionate, nothing can really happen in this world. So I think one of the lessons that I have learned for myself and for the women that I work with is, till you are confident of what you're doing, you'll never get there. I'm just also reminded of this very funny incident. The moment we released Made by Her event, posters on the digital space, inviting women to participate, the first 10 calls we got were from men. So can we participate? So we said no, unless you're a 49% holder of the company, you cannot participate. So so there were men who just grabbed the opportunity, picked up the phone, but women took 2 months to think. So that's a difference, right? I mean, whatever it is, that's a different, and we all need to wake up to the situation that this is the real story. So we can't just keep saying, oh, he gets more business, or she's doing better. What are you doing about it at the end of the day? So that's the biggest lesson that I've learned. Pratap, sorry, I don't know, I probably went freewheeling, but I think the lessons for the women and for myself are, if you're not passionate about it, nothing is ever going to work for you. You need to go out and look for connects. We all say digital age, everything is available in front of you. It's very easy to do that. Nothing is easy. You might know the right people, but getting business is tough. And the persistence is the only thing that's paid. Sometimes we make 25 calls to people, to corporates, to get something done. Ego is being kept aside. And unfortunately for me, I came with a lot of experience. So after having spent 18 years in a leadership role, I had a big ego. Because my chair used to speak for me, I mean, I was not Poornima. I was a director of talent for XYZ company, right? The title opened the doors for me. And I didn't have to go after people. The moment I said my company name, people would call me. But one fine day, I was a zero-sum game. I was just myself, no tags, no nothing, and no personal branding really. I mean, there was no brand that I had established for myself. And I realized you really had to keep your ego aside, and if you really want to do business, you have to persevere and persist. And it has taken, like I said, sometimes 25, sometimes even more follow-ups to get anything done, even if it's free. Even if I was giving something for free, if they were not takers for it. So I had to really push it. So I think those are some of the things that I have.
Information which is relevant more as to how do you go ahead. You have the opportunity, right? We see it on movies, right? Everyone wants to get into the most happening place, a party at night. But the challenge is getting through the doorkeeper or the gatekeeper. Maybe a bouncer at a club or anything, and that is having the opportunity for someone to create a chance out of the opportunity. So, perseverance is important. Like you said, you actually have to make 25 calls sometimes. And you have so many stakeholders in this particular community, buyers, suppliers, the ecosystem per se. So what would you like to see on the partnerships that you have established, and what more is in the pipeline with regards to growth, not just for women at work, but even for organizations, your corporate partners, your vendors and suppliers, the whole ecosystem at women at work?
Right. So I think the entire ecosystem broadly, I'll break it into multiple pieces. I think one is the people that you go along with, the communities and the collaborators that you go along with. I think we, in the women's space, as I got into the space, sometimes when you go with an idea, you think there aren't any other players in this, but when you actually get deeper, you realize someone says, oh, do you know that's also there? Do you know this is also there? And you're like, oh God, did I do the wrong thing? Sometimes you're like, we all think that this is missing, but when you actually go searching, Google will not throw it up all the times, but there are people in your neighborhood who will tell you, acha, wo bhi hai, wo bhi jaake dekh lo, So after, in fact, I faced this, after 6 months, I thought maybe I'm in the wrong business. Because I thought probably either women didn't need professional stuff or there was enough happening. But then I really spoke to a lot of people and I went deep. I said, you tell me what you're doing. How is this going to work? And fortunately for me, I think we could find a space with some of the collaborators. Now collaborators, like I said, are people who you think are potential competition, but they're actually people who probably have been there in the ecosystem a little before you or with you, who have a little, I would say, gyan of the space. And can teach you a few lessons, and already have a bit of a, stake in the game. So we started early on, and I think one of the strongest ways, even for the Made by Her event and even for our Women at Work platform, I spoke about CII, governmental organizations, Ministry of Women and Child Development. We are trying to, bring in them. For the Pune event, we had, the mayor coming in. She's a woman. I mean, she's a career woman with a lot of, qualifications to be there for the job. We all know the police commissioner of Pune, she's again an outstanding career professional herself. So we also involved a lot of these, organizations into our system. Because sometimes you can't really go it alone. You really need people to, target. And of course, like I said, Ayush, Startup Grind. Then there are some other communities that we work with. So also we realize that it's not just good to work with women communities. I mean, we are not just going to, it's for women, but at the end of the day, like Sheryl Sandberg said, the world is still ruled by men, right? So we still have to get the men in the system. And very honestly, see, it's not a man versus woman thing, it's about collaboration, because everybody benefits. We're talking about equal homes, equal work. So everybody benefits, so we got the collaborators in place. In terms of customers, the early adopters for me were my corporate clients. And then I realized that when I actually start getting to the right people, so today we have, I've spoken to about 35 to 40 companies who have all kind of broadly signed up for the supply diversity agenda. And when you go to some of the Indian companies, they're big names, they're very big names in India, even abroad. But when you go and tell them about supply diversity, they said, oh, is there something like this that exists in the whole wide world? Because see, everybody's so, we have people here who work with companies, right? But you'll be so busy doing your own work that you forget there's a bigger world outside. So many people didn't even know this was something that was a game changer for them in terms of brand as their big company brand, And second is they did not realize that this actually had a business case to it. So I said, I'm not looking for the CSR person, I'm looking for the procurement person. Because this is not a social responsibility, this is a business deal. If you get good vendors at optimal prices, you're going to save money. So that's your procurement objective. I'm not going to talk to CSR because I go to CSR when I have a social objective to meet, which is pure social, but this is a business objective. So, about 30 to 40 companies we got into the system. To be very honest, getting the first 2-3 international ones were much easier. It took us a lot of time to convince the Indian ones to get into it. But the good news is the Indian ones, once they came in, they were also the ones who converted very fast. So, they kind of converted very fast. So that's on the customer ecosystem. For the community. So, we obviously have a readership, we have a magazine, we have a blog, but now the digital platform that we have created of Made by Her, that's a very focused. So what we're also doing is, while we have a broad community, we're also going into niche. So Made by Her is for women who either are in business or want to get into business. So they connect with us through the digital platform. We are using social media platforms. In fact, we're just launching some closed groups on these communities because again, we are all deluged with social media today. Messages in the morning. Thankfully, the good morning messages have stopped after Forbes published that article about Indians cluttering the internet with good morning messages. Today, nobody sends it, thankfully. But see, we all want to be part of groups which are business specific, right? We all only see those groups which are business specific, not forwards anymore. Forwards is okay with 1 or 2 groups for your bum chums or classmates. So we are trying to tap the communities on social media, the applications, like WhatsApp and many others, bringing closed group discussions into it so that we now grow very, very consciously into verticals. One is women entrepreneurs, and second is women who want to work or are working, because the corporate world operates a little differently and entrepreneurship operates a little differently. So we're just trying to create 2 parallel communities so that people are not just onto one community reading stuff, but they're also getting something out of it. Because for me, it's about inspiration and last mile coverage. You can't have one without the other. You need to inspire people, but after inspiration, where do they go? You need to get them into something. So trying to do that. So that's from an ecosystem standpoint. The customers and the consumers for us obviously are women, and for them the content will always be free, because we are in that model where you kind of consume a lot of content, but if you avail services, then of course you pay for your services. So that's broadly. If I've answered your question, that's broadly the spaces that I'm looking at.
Thank you. So we've definitely heard a lot more about women at work, and there's a lot more to it. But since we're a little short on time, what I would like to do is know a little more about you. As an entrepreneur, or as someone who's inspiring to get into business, something that actually comes in their mind, one of the first things is funding. As you mentioned, you really wanted to get into the magazine, creating a magazine. And it's very, you need to have a lot of cash reserves to kind of really get into that space. And people are also talking about creating a different team as a founding team to be able to drive different aspects of the business together. But you've managed to do it all by yourself and bootstrapped it throughout the entire journey without funding till date.
Right.
And that's unheard of. Everyone's looking, okay, when do I move to get at least some seed fund, if not seed fund, Series A or something, right? So if you could share a little more about, how could you do it by yourself? How were you, successful in doing that? And talking about funding associated with the team and being the sole founder,
right,
and how funding is associated with it.
Right. So, two separate questions. So funding, I knew I was kind of, so entrepreneurship was something that I wanted to do. Before I left the world, I wanted to create something for myself. So I said, I've spent, 16, 17 years in the industry. I wanted to do this. Obviously, I kind of created a personal fund, which I knew it's sink or die. So I kind of put it into this. So that's how I started really with the venture. I got a lot of people telling me, well-wishers, my own family and a lot of others, that it's foolish to start a magazine all by yourself, because magazine is an industry. A magazine is a space which consumes a lot of capital. So you need to be smart about it. And then I also got a lot of advice on whether women professional space is really a space that you need to get into. So I was kind of already prepared for the risks that came with it. I knew I'm getting into something which is niche, and there are chances it might not work. But I said, the only thing I told myself was, if I believe in it, and I believed in it and I saw a space. But if consumers don't see a space for themselves, because at the end of the day, I might think great about my idea, but people need to buy it, right? At the end of the day, you need to have customers. So my only thing was, if consumers don't buy it, even for free, they don't take it, then I know that I'm in the wrong place. Because, and then I also told myself, then probably I don't deserve to be an entrepreneur. So I set myself very clear objectives, that if you cannot sell your business to people, if you cannot convince people about the need for your product, then you're better off somewhere else. You see, in a corporate, you can keep saying, the boss didn't do this, I'm the most talented, but I didn't get the promotion, I didn't get the salary increase. You can blame everybody else, but in an entrepreneurship role, you have only yourself to blame. So if your idea did not fly through, if you didn't get consumers, you didn't get work, that means there's something wrong with what you did really. So you need to go back to the drawing board. So I kind of got into it. The other thing, like I said, that was the time I got into. I started reading a lot about equity. I started reading a lot about stuff around, and I realized that it's important to build a sustainable business. You can bring in equity early on. Or at an early stage, and really kind of wither all the cash away. You can throw the cash, because in a media business, or rather in any business, marketing is the biggest cost, right? Marketing and salaries and all that as the biggest cost. But you can really throw the money away if you do equity, but you're throwing someone else's money away, right? You can close down and you can do whatever with it. But I realized that I wanted to build a business, because I said, I identify myself with a tortoise. So I wanted to build something slow and steady, which is sustainable, which is revenue generating on its own. Until it stands to a certain level, I'm not going to bring anybody's funds in or invest in people's. It's very easy for me to get 25 or 30 people to work with me. But after 2 months, if I tell them I can't pay your salaries, that's not a state that I wanted to get into. I was very clear, because somebody would have left everything to join me. And if I couldn't afford them for at least, 2 years, very clearly I would tell them, I have 24 months of salary, this is what it is, are you ready to take the risk? So I didn't want, I was not in a game where I wanted to say, let's see kya hoega. I didn't want to do that, take a chance in that sense. I wanted to be a calculated risk taker to the extent that I could possibly do. So that's why I said, let me go bootstrap. So I still have some, personal goals and some business goals that I need to achieve. And once I kind of reach a certain level of sustainability, and if I find, some kind of funding, probably not equity funding to be the right one there, but I'm very clear this business needs to work on its own, because that's when I know the base is very strong. Because every day you open the papers, you hear about 10 startups starting up, 5 closing down. So, it's, you never know which side of the newspaper you're on that day, right? So I kind of, and having come with a little bit of experience, I wanted to be a little more, and since I think age also, is important. When you're 22 and 23, probably you don't need to think of a lot of things. You're a full risk taker because you've not gone through the motions. But after 16 years of work experience, you have a bit of work experience. You've gone through people, you've met people. So I think a little bit of experience. So I consciously have chosen to be bootstrapped. I've sunk in all my money into this, needless to say, and but I know if it has to work on its own head, and then we take it forward. So that's on the funding bit, and I kind of am still connected with a lot of ecosystem people in the fundraising space, but I'm evaluating my time because I don't think I'm ready for equity at all. I don't want to get into that space right now. So that's one. On the co-founding piece and the sole founder, I think he was talking about finding a founding partner and employees coming and leaving, right? You spoke about it. For me, so my intent was not to be a sole founder. I'm still looking for people with the right mindset to join me as a founding team, if they have. Unfortunately for me, I have one more criteria: they need to be women. And why I say unfortunately is because I haven't really found too many women who are either kind of want to come into this space, or possibly are they looking at a salary job or something. So I still talk to a lot of people, but I've kept my options open in terms of founding. I still think I personally feel it's good to have at least 2 people on the team. That's what my general intelligence says. But it's also important to find the right person because it's almost like a marriage. It can make or break, and the divorce can be very expensive. And I really want to say this here in this forum that I've been trying to look for women technology partners, and they've been so difficult to get by because I don't know, either we've not been able to communicate well, or there are very limited women-owned businesses in the technology space. Right from starting. Sometimes you just can't leave work. So because if I'm talking about supply diversity, I need to practice it myself. But it's been very difficult to find women in different spaces. And I'm on the lookout most of the time. So if you know anybody, who's in different spaces, always happy to kind of get connected. But yeah, so that's the story on co-founders. I don't think it's by design. I think it's more by default. I'd still love to have people on board, like-minded people. I think he said it correctly. So,
thank you for sharing that, because that actually talks about the different qualities and characteristics you would look for in a founder. One of the main objectives would be try and touch base on here more than the successes. Everyone's happy to look at the successes and try and replicate it. But what many people forget to notice are the mistakes. The hurdles someone has personally faced, overcome to reach the successes they have. So I believe for this, as our community, the Startup Grind community, what we try and look at is, what are the mistakes or the failures you'd like to share that you would like other entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs to kind of take into account before they make that mistake themselves, which could cost them time, money, effort. And even lose the interest in becoming an entrepreneur. So, what would your advice be? And if you could share a couple of, maybe not a couple of mistakes, but maybe a mistake or two, which you would like others to take a look at before they actually do it themselves.
Yeah, so obviously the mistake list is obviously longer than the ones that you think you've done right. But a few, I think, So I think one of them is a classic one of finding the first few customers who will believe in what you do, right? That's I think always a challenge, and I think it's happened to me as well. Whenever I've gone out with a magazine or my event or a product or something, have you done this before? And it's ironical that some of the startup giants who are today so big ask you, have you done this before? So, it's very funny because if I'd done this before, then obviously I wouldn't be, I'd be doing something else, right? So I think the question about have you done it before, am I your first customer? So, what's your background in this kind of thing? How do you pull it off? Basically, that's the thing people are trying to establish. So that's, I think, been my biggest hurdle. And I think the only way, and I'm sure many of us face this, I found only 2 approaches that have worked for me. At times is sometimes you really have to I think the way you speak about it, your passion, I think just convinces them that this is what it is. I mean, do you really mean it? There's no science that I found to it. It's mostly the perseverance and the passion with which you push them and tell them to try your product, even if it's for free. I think that's worked, and so I think that's a big hurdle. And I would think one of the things I could have done better in that space could have been if I had if I had done my research on startup ecosystems and communities much before I started. I think I would have been in a better off place, because I learned a lot of stuff first 6 months into my venture, whereas I think these are some things I should have done my R&D on the startup spaces, networks and communities prior, because then I think I would have probably saved a good 6 to 8 months, which is a very long time in the business. So I think that's one in terms of getting connected with communities. The second challenge that I think I've faced is early on when you are fresh, especially since I didn't come from the field. I was not a media person, so I think I kind of burnt a lot of cash and my time on vendors who just came by, and I just kind of believed the first vendor and started working with people, thinking they'll be partners for long. I don't think I did my due diligence properly of working with vendors. Vendors means, for me, vendors were very critical, because virtually I started off on an outsourcing model. I believe that only the core expertise should lie with me. The other things should be with other people. And I think I burnt cash. I burnt my time also in that, because I think I didn't do a due diligence. And again, it's linked to the first point of communities, because if it connected to a lot more communities, I would have access to a lot more vendors and a lot of smart people who've already done it before. And I probably wouldn't have made some of the mistakes that I made. So I think that's the second one possibly that I think that I did, and I think the other one is really about when you're trying to do something new, when you're trying to create a space for it. I think the influencers and a team of advisors early on is very important. I think you need to have people who can do a little navigation in the ecosystem for you, or either be your, not just mentors, I would say, they can be your sponsors, let me put it that way, they can be your sponsors. So, you talk about career sponsors, I think it's important to have startup sponsors. So, I think I probably did not get them early on, so I kind of took my time to get the right people in place. But if I had done that, I should have done it pre-launch of my phase, because I think again I would have got a lot of spaces, a lot of routes would have been shorter for me if I had done that early on. So I think those are the top three things that I can think of.
Thank you for sharing those experiences. And so I know a lot of us are itching to ask questions, and before we open up the floor for questions, one final question before we wrap this chat. So this is a question I got from the experience you're sharing, and I have a lot of questions, but this is my final one for the time being. You mentioned a lot of women at work have aspirations, and they're always discussing about motherhood, parenting, and a lot of other home-related challenges more than anything else. And you also spoke about interview asking a CEO, not asking a CEO about how do they maintain a work-life balance. And I think it's more challenging for women, right, more than men, because society dictates, yes, the man, it's unfortunate that, okay, he doesn't really have to worry about it, the home's been taken care of. But even society, to a certain extent, cultural differences and stuff is, how does she manage it? So, we'd really like to know your thoughts on how have you been able to create the balance in work, the work-life balance, and what your advice would be to be successful in both your career as well as your personal lives. And not just for women, sorry, it's actually
no,
for men.
I was going to say that. Thanks for adding that. So I would say, this is for both men and women. I think it's just, for me, I go by a simple thing. It's equal work, equal homes. Very simple. You have to keep work equal. You cannot work if you don't have an equal home. And sometimes it's important to, just important to go by what you believe in. You have to have resources. So, so there's this very stereotypical fairy tales. You take Cinderella, you take Snow White, you take whoever, you take all the advertisements that come on TV. Everybody portrays a woman as a caregiver and a nurturer. So if I don't give my child cornflakes, my child will be unhealthy. The father cannot give the child cornflakes. The mother has to give the child cornflakes or juice, right, to be healthy. So that's a portrayal we've created. It's important, and you can study all the men and women who've been successful. I think they have decided what their priorities are. It's unfortunate that in many societies, including India, women necessarily don't have a career identity. Career identity is a choice for women here. For men, it's not a choice, because we don't look at house husbands very favorably, really. Other than Chetan Bhagat or some of the other known personalities, I don't think we've looked at such things very favorably. So the point is not who's going to work at home. The point is, if both are working and have a career identity, what's happening back home, which people can share equally. And if it's very simple, if you cannot do the housework, neither can your spouse. You need to outsource it to third-party people, and you need to obviously have the economic might to be able to outsource it, because outsourcing is expensive, right? We all know that. Unpaid work is cheaper, but outsourcing work is expensive, right? So if you have a cook at home, it's more expensive than you cooking the food yourself, right? Because that's unpaid work. I mean, nobody pays the person who's cooking, the wife, to cook for food, right? Paying for cooking. So I think what's important is, it's very simple. You need to make sure the stuff at home is being divided equally amongst men and women. In India, it's not easy to get that happening. There are a lot of people around you, the ecosystem players, the neighbors, the in-laws. So I'll give a simple example. Picking up a child from school. Most of the times you see mothers at the bus stop, right? Mothers in the playground. Things are changing today. It's okay for men to be taking their children to the playground, right? So the society is also changing a bit. I think we also need to do our bit, saying if my career identity is important, how do I make things work around it? So there was a very nice, in an interview, one lady, said she was going through this. She was an amazing professional at work. She was one of the very senior people. She quit her job because her son was going through some exams. So she thought she wanted to give more time to him. And she was such an impatient homebody that everybody said, please don't do us a disservice by sitting at home. Please go to work. You're better at work because you're not really meant for this kind of space. You're making everything miserable here. And then she learned, she said, it's not that I can give healthy food to my family by being in office. I just have to make sure that they get healthy food. I don't have to necessarily cook the healthy food. Right? So it's important to understand what your career identity is. A, do you want to have a career identity? And this is specifically for women. If you want to have a career identity, you need to find a partner who agrees with your having a career identity, because the biggest challenge men and women face is when your partner is not agreeable to your career identity. And I think that's the biggest showstopper. When we do interviews, we do a lot of interviews. We never ask this question, who would you thank you for your support? Before us asking, the second answer they give us is, but you're not asking me about who's helped me reach here, right? So women normally think that they need to give the men and the others in the family credit for taking care of them, but the men never ask me this question. They never say, you've not asked us who's helped us get here. They don't say, my wife supported me, so I came here, my children supported me, so I became successful, right? So it's important for you to understand that you need to create that equality at home. It could be anything. If you like paying the bills, then the partner could be doing the groceries. If the partner likes doing groceries, you could be paying the bills. If somebody likes to pick the child up from school, you can do that. But you can take the child to the playground. So you basically share responsibilities, because otherwise careers will not happen. And nobody in this room wants an employee who's taking care of home more than work. I don't think any of us want such employees who will take home care during work hours, right? We don't want to do that. So unless you create balance back there, you will not have balance here. If you don't send the man in the office back home when the child is sick, the woman will always be the primary caregiver. Because if you're not sending the man home here, in some other office, the woman has to go home to take care of the child. So I think that's really where the work-life balance is. Also, I think using digital. I was just reading a study by Accenture recently. We all have to use digital to make our lives simpler and better. And both men and women need to adapt it to really make equal work, equal homes, because we cannot do it the traditional way. We really need to do it the way forward, which is digital. So that's the second thing. Third, and this is specifically for women, include the men in your conversations. Find the right partner for career identities. Even you choose late in life to have a career identity. Make people your partners and ask for help. Women think, there's this very famous thing by Indira Nooyi saying women can't have it all. Nobody can do it all. Ask for help. Because when you ask, it's okay for you to ask someone, say, can you do this at home for me? It could be anybody. It could be your in-laws. It could be your parents. It could be anybody. But unless you ask for help, you will never get it. Don't assume the other person is going to come and help you, because everybody who needs help needs to ask someone. So I think those are the top points that I would think, which I also have adopted myself, and I think, I think there's still more to be done, but I think this is just a starting point of what we can do to have the elusive work-life balance we are looking for.
Great. So, Poornima, thank you so much for such an informative talk and sharing ideas which we all, not just women but even men, can take back home and into their businesses and look at how we can make things better and even grow our organizations, both for the organization as well as the individuals involved. So thank you again, and so we'll open the floor
Thank you
for
so
questions.
much.
And if we can give a big round of applause.